Sean Hook's Newsmaker Saturday starts now.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Saturday. We've got a jam-packed program. Later on in the program, we're going to talk to FOX Business Gerri Willis about this insane economy and the wild swings in the stock market that we saw illustrated this week on Wednesday and Thursday. 1,000 points up, 1,000 points down. What does it mean to your retirement, your 401k, buying a home, the rising inflation that's taking a bite out of any raise you might have gotten? We'll have all of it. That's later. But we begin at the border. Arizona, as you probably know, shares a 372-mile border with Mexico. Cochise County in southern Arizona accounts for about 84 miles of that chunk in the far southeastern corner of the state. Cochise County right now is bracing for a surge of illegal immigration, the likes we have never seen. The Department of Homeland Security is planning for a worst-case scenario of 18,000 people a day being apprehended at the southern border in the 6 weeks following the May 23rd end date for Title 42, if it indeed expires. Now, we're at record levels now. For some perspective, 5,000 to 7,000 a day, non-citizens encountered at the border daily. They are bracing for 18,000. And remember that the Obama administration said that 1,000 apprehensions a day would constitute a crisis. That's where we are. Mark Dannels, is sheriff of Cochise County, first elected 2012, 29-year veteran of law enforcement. Great to see you, Sheriff. I'm sorry, Daniels just rolls off my tongue, but it is Dannels. Good to see you.
Good seeing you too, John.
Okay, give me a sense of what you're seeing right now and what you're bracing for.
Well, to begin, when it comes to the public safety, national security, humanitarian, it only gets worse. From the times I've been on your show over the last 15, 16 months, we've seen an uptick every month. To give you an example, just on our camera system here, start off there, 2 years ago, in the first 4 months, we were maximized about 1,600 in 4 months. Right now, we're at 24,000. To show you the difference of encounters just off our camera system. Here in Cochise County, in the month of February of 2022, we had 38,000 come across the southeast corner of the state of Arizona. 22,000 were encountered, which means they were caught by Border Patrol down here on the border. Only 995 were returned to Mexico. Wow. 21,000 were released into the United States. But to add on to that, another 16,516 gotaways. That's what we know of that got away through my county that are 100% camouflaged, that are now released into the country, which if you look at the whole southwest border, that accounts for about 300,000 in the first 4 to 5 months of the year.
300,000. Sheriff,
Yes.
Have you ever seen anything like this in Cochise County?
John, in my 38 years, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, but I've never seen the worst. And now we're experiencing the worst. To give you an example, we've been running operations down here due to the exposure this border has placed, the vulnerability with the smugglers and the impact we're seeing down here. Since we've been running these details in the last several months, we have booked 777 border-related criminals into my jail. My jail only has a capacity of 302. So we've doubled the capacity in our jail just based on border-related criminals that we have apprehended.
These are people who've come across and committed crimes in the United States, in your county.
These are a mixture of both. Those coming across committing crimes, and these are not just the illegals or the migrants that are being caught. If they haven't committed a state crime, we don't charge them. This is the smugglers, the 1,000 smugglers a month plus come into Cochise County that are bringing their ill wills. I'm talking about their warrants. They've got drugs on them. They're armed. They've committed a crime of some sort that have caused them to be booked in our jail, all the way up to murder. When they flee, they crash, they kill somebody, they get booked in our jail. It's something we've never seen here in the county, and it's frustrating to say the least, John.
Sheriff, what are your residents saying when they're watching this kind of unbridled migration happening? What are they saying to you guys? What are they saying to the elected leaders?
They're frustrated. It's very embracing. The community's been very embracing to my office, to the troopers down here, to the law enforcement and Border Patrol. They know we have our hands full. They know it. They're very frustrated with this administration. I can tell you that much. You know, I hear it all the time when people from outside the border talk and saying, you know, what's going on down there. The biggest complaint comes from those wearing a badge, because we see it every day. We've seen where we've been. We see where we're at today, and there's nothing good going on here. We have no engagement, John, with Department of Homeland Security in Washington, D.C. or this administration. We have no engagement. And as a result of that, border security is in jeopardy at the southern border. I'm
going to run a brief piece from Brian Yennis of Fox News outlining kind of what's at stake with Title 42, which could be lifted shortly. This is Brian Yennis, Fox News.
Faces of Americans across this country dying because of fentanyl pouring into our country.
After 2 days of contentious hearings on Capitol Hill, DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas made it clear that his department is expecting to see an increase in border crossings once Title 42 is lifted next month.
We will address this challenge successfully.
On Friday, President Biden spoke with Mexico's president about the situation at the border, including the migration response. This week, a federal judge in Louisiana temporarily blocked the Biden administration from ending the public health order and has set a hearing for the case for May 13th, 10 days before it was set to expire. The White House will comply with the order.
When Title 42 is lifted, it'll be 500,000 people in 5 weeks. I don't know, and they'll have no legal status, by the way. Biggest human trafficking event of our lifetime. What are we going to do with these people?
The issue has struck a divide among congressional Democrats. Some believe the administration does not have an adequate plan in place to deal with the surge, while others argue Title 42 should have never been used in the first place.
President Biden did the right thing to substitute something that is more effective at the border, to protect our border, and to respect our responsibility to welcome refugees.
A move on Title 42 could come from Congress if lawmakers are successful in including it in broader legislation meant for Ukraine aid. In Eagle Pass, Texas, Brian Yennis, Fox News.
Cochise County Sheriff Mark Dannels is with us. Why do I get a feeling that the politicians in Washington, they seem more concerned about Ukraine than they do about our own border?
Well, I heard this the other day, John, that we've spent more on the Ukraine borders in a week than we have in a year on our own border. In fact, we cut Border Patrol's budget, like Congress did, by just under $1 billion. So we're in a crisis on top of a crisis down here, and we're cutting the funds of our own CBP. So is it frustrating down here working with our agents, who I support 100%, and our law enforcement, to see where we've been? This is our home. This is our community. And to hear Speaker Pelosi, hear Secretary Mayorkas, or this president say, we're ready for this surge. I'll just say to you, John, and all your viewers, nobody's talking about border security. What is the plan? There is no plan. What is the plan about humanitarian? What is the plan about national security? There is no plan. The plan they have out there is a plan, how better can we receive the thousands that we're already seeing, but also the thousands that are going to come after Title 42 goes away. Whether Title 42 is a factor, take that out of the equation for a minute. What are we doing to secure this border? What are we doing to improve immigration reform? And I lay that in the back of Congress. I lay that back on the President of the United States and his administration. John, it's frustrating down here. It's an insult for us wearing a badge down here, doing everything we can and trying to keep our community safe.
Sheriff, I asked you this before, and I just can't get an answer from anybody. What would the administration's motive be to kind of allow this to go on unchecked? I mean, I think we are a very welcoming country. We are a nation of immigrants. I mean, my family, your family probably. I mean, we all came here from somewhere else, if you start going back. The point is, though, there's a process. This has no process. So I'm wondering why it appears that this is being almost encouraged. What would be the point? What is the point? Do you know?
I don't know the exact point, but I'll say this much to you. When it comes to what we address, what I've been elected to do in my county, and that is to protect my citizens, enhance their quality of life, and keep them safe. This administration, and Speaker of the House Pelosi in her statement just a few minutes ago, and the many she's made beyond that, this is a political ideology playing out by them with no regard for their oath of offices, and that is to protect America. They think that we're welcoming all I'm saying to you is we've seen death after death down here. We've seen crime after crime down here. When you have a plan that's not working and you fail to engage with your governors, with your mayors, with your sheriffs to say, hey, what do we think is best? We've tried to do that, by the way, John. We have actually on national sheriffs, we submitted a 16-point action plan. I asked several months ago after that to Secretary Mayorkas, hey, what about our action plan? Can we discuss that? I don't remember that, Sheriff. That's the lack of engagement we're dealing with here on the southern border. We're on our own here. And I appreciate governors. I appreciate mayors. I appreciate the citizens and the media that will actually address the facts that's going down here. So thank you for what you're doing, John.
Well, I think we're just trying to report what's happening. There's been a shocking lack of curiosity from the national media about this southern border. It's like nobody wants to report on it unless it's kids in cages and you can blame it on somebody. It's just an observation. It seems like there's a complete lack of intellectual curiosity about this issue.
I 100% agree on that, John. We live it every day down here. We run operations every day at a cost of about $20,000 per week to run operations to keep citizens safe in my county. In fact, we're going to kick one up right after that. That's why I'm doing the interview from the car right now. It's so frustrating. It's not like it's like they don't care about us down here. But I'm telling you, in the first 4 months of this year, we've seen over 94 pounds of methamphetamine. We've had 24,000 encounters. My point to you is this, that there's nothing good coming out of this lack of avoidance, this willful neglect. And I call it intellectual avoidance because these people are smart. It would be wrong to say they're not. So what they're doing is on the backs of every American. When you have 300 Americans dying every day of drug overdoses, and we fail to recognize that, we fail to recognize the humanitarian side of people dying on our border, all along the southwest border, to include my own, and those coming in the country, these gotaways that can't give up, they have to be smuggled by the cartel, camouflaged up. They are aggravated, which means they've been deported. They're criminals, which means they're automatically going to be flagged, or they're from country of interest. The bottom line is this. We have to do a better job, and we are failing to do that right now, which goes back to an oath of office that we've all taken, state, local, and federal.
Let's talk a little bit about Title 42. This was put in under the Trump administration, kind of under the auspices of not allowing people in who might be carrying COVID. That was kind of the genesis of it. So it gave a pretext for the Trump administration to keep people out. And the Biden administration, even though they've fought it, I guess privately they're really worried about this being rejected and overturned and ended because it is going to create a crisis at the border. You are telling me now that there is no plan in place for when Title 42 ends. You have not seen anything that's saying we're going to do this, 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 and this to get ready for Title 42 ending. There's no planning?
There is a 6-point plan I saw from Secretary Mayorkas through some, I don't remember who sent that to me, John, but I did see something like that. But the plan is not about how we manage it. It's about how we bring him in and how do we handle the surge and release him into the country faster. Think about that for a minute. That means we're almost inviting these surges to come. And the statements of, like Secretary Mayorkas said last week, I believe it was, saying, don't come. That's a cheap statement. And I hate to say it like that. That is a cheap statement. If you don't put consequences by coming across our border illegally. Now, I've stood for the rule of law for 38 years as a law enforcement officer in this state. And to hear those messages where there is no consequences behind it, we know there's not because we're seeing it every day. 22,995 are turned back to Mexico. 21,000 are released. Let me say that's a heck of an impact on this state and every community within. Secretary Mayorkas is avoiding public safety, national security. I can't say that enough because it's happening every day down here.
Yeah, and you're not you're not the only one saying it. Let's listen to the governor on this program just a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago. I've lost track. The time flies. And he was really, it was February. He was really upset with Secretary Mayorkas. Take a listen.
The Biden administration is failing on our southern border. This issue was brought up to the president. His answer was wholly inadequate. I think you know that I've called for Secretary Mayorkas's resignation. This is not an issue that they are taking seriously. The president was generous with his time, and he met with every governor from around the country that was in Washington, D.C. for the governor's only meeting. But he conflates border security with immigration. And, John, he reminisced about the good old days when he and Lindsey Graham almost solved this issue in the United States Senate. John, he's been vice president for 8 years. He was out of office for 4 years. Today, he's president of the United States, and he has the power to address and fix this issue with the stroke of a pen, and he chooses not to do it.
It sounds exactly like what you've been telling us on this program.
John, it is. And I've spoke with the governor. He was here. We met with him last week, met him the week before. He was in Cochise County. I appreciate him. I appreciate our Attorney General coming here. But let me say this. You saw Speaker Pelosi went to Ukraine, saw their border, saw what's going on there. Why hasn't she been to the southern border? Why has Vice President Harris not been here? And why has the President of the United States not been here? That's where I make the comments: orchestrated, intellectual intent, and also willful neglect. This is what they want. They want our border to be open. They want to make sure we can address as many that want to come across and get them in the United States. That is their plan, but nothing to negate any of the challenges and vulnerabilities they're putting America in.
Sheriff,
and that's where I stand.
It sounds like, you know, we're still dealing with this asylum issue. Is everybody coming across claiming asylum? Is that pretty much what's happening?
Oh yeah, that's become the infectious word. They know all they got to do is come across illegally. Instead of going to the port of entries and claiming it and doing a legal process, they come across our borders and they're smuggled. That's mainly because of the cartels. The cartels control our southern border. But that is the magic word. Now, I've said this before, John, we could fix this. We could fix this very simply. If we hire asylum and immigration officers and put them at every port of entry and within regions on the southwest border, 9 out of 10 could be addressed in less than a couple hours. And they could be, which means they won't even meet the asylum claim criteria. Even Secretary Mayorkas told me, you're 100% correct on that, Sheriff, but no action has been put forward on that. You think about something, Health and Human Services are spending right now on the southwest border $60 million a week is what I was told. $60 million a week on our southwest border just to address those coming across saying asylum. If we took that money, $60 million a week, and hired asylum and immigration hearing officers, we could address this and we'd stop the surge very quickly.
Okay. Sheriff Mark Dannels, we really appreciate it. I know you've got an impossible job down there, and we're going to be checking in with you as we get closer to the end of Title 42. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
When
appreciate
we come back
Bye-bye.
on Newsmaker Saturday, Gerri Willis, Fox Business, on the topsy-turvy, turbulent markets right now. You saw it this week. She'll break it down for us right after the break. Back on Newsmaker Saturday, what a crazy, wild week in the market. Incredible swings of 1,000 points, up Wednesday, down 1,000 on Thursday. Trying to make sense of it all, let's check in with Gerri Willis, Fox Business. Gerri, if you were going to try to explain to a 7-year-old what the heck is going on, what would you tell him?
Well, if I was trying to explain to maybe my mother, what I would say is that the markets have lost their minds and they can't make up their mind where they want to go. What's going on here? Well, traders, professional traders, are deeply concerned about the level of inflation in this economy, and they have no confidence that the Federal Reserve is able to quash it, to reduce it. Now, as you know, this week we had a 50 basis point rate hike from the Federal Reserve. That's the biggest increase in rates in 22 years. So a very big move by the Fed. Even so, investors are saying, hey, it should have been bigger, it should have been more intense. So you're seeing a lack of confidence here in the Federal Reserve. It's showing up in stocks. We had a 1,000-point gain in markets on Wednesday, and then a sell-off of the same magnitude and more on Thursday. So very volatile markets. This is because investors are trying to figure out what is the future. The markets are all about figuring out what's coming tomorrow, not just what happened today. And it's really difficult to tell. We don't know where inflation is going. We don't know exactly what Jay Powell and crew at the Federal Reserve are going to do in the future, possibly 2 more 50 basis point rate cuts. And the big kahuna question, we don't know the impact on inflation.
Yeah, and this is the thing, and this is really hurting people because we know wages are growing at a robust rate, but they're getting drowned out by inflation. So people are treading water. They're treading water or losing ground.
Losing ground for the most part, because these wage hikes, though they're big, aren't as big as inflation. So that means that your dollar is buying less and less every month. And believe me, Americans feel that. And it's not just inflation at the gas pump. We've seen gas prices go through the roof. It's inflation at the grocery store, where your fruit, your meat, everything you buy is more expensive. And of course, housing prices have been on fire. One of those issues that people are keeping a very close eye on this week has been mortgage rates, which are up at a new high of 5.5% nationally. And let me tell you, that's having a big impact on the housing market. Those higher rates are translating into a flatlining of housing sales. And we're seeing buyers now, or sellers that is, starting to think about, well, what do I do with the price I'm asking for this house? Do I need to cut it? So it's going to be interesting to see how the housing market reacts. But in the short term, you might want to keep your powder dry when it comes to stocks, because this uncertainty will probably continue for a while.
Well, and this housing thing is so interesting because for the average price of a home right now, if you're on an adjustable rate mortgage, that mortgage now up around 5%, for the average home in the United States, that is going to cost the borrower $500 more a month. That's a big deal.
Well, and that's just now. An adjustable rate mortgage resets again and again and again. And as rates go higher, it will continue to reset higher. So best case scenario here, if you have adjustable rate debt, you want to lock it in, get a conventional 30-year fixed rate mortgage, even though it's at 5%, because you don't want that number to continue to go higher. This is a time when you pay off credit cards. You take a look at your credit score. You do everything you can to bring it down, because what you're trying to do at the end of the day is bring down your costs for higher interest rates. And let me tell you, these charges are on cards are going to go through the roof.
Jerry, we were rolling. This economy was rolling. And then an election happened. And you can't fail to see the nexus between policy shifts. This whole thing has changed in the matter of 2 years.
Well, I have to say, I know the president lately has been talking about the deficit and that it's, we need to work on that. Well, let me tell you what doesn't work with a deficit, and that's spending more money. One of the big problems for the economy right now is that the federal government has been spending more and more and more money bailing people out of COVID. They're talking about forgiving student loans, more money overseas for a variety of different folks. That just doesn't work. Build back better. All of that ends up adding to inflation in the economy. And it makes for a weaker economy, fewer job prospects. One of the numbers we got this week, which was astonishing, labor productivity. Now, let me tell you, this is a critically important number for the American economy. We are the most productive economy in the world with a small proportion of its workers. And yet, we are the most productive. But that number down to a 1947 low, that is not good. So we got to get this economy back on even footing. And that will mean that the federal government's going to have to stop spending money like Topsy.
Yeah, it's going to be choppy for a while, it appears, where there is no easy way out. That's the problem.
No.
Gerri Willis, Fox Business, thank you so much on a busy, crazy week. We really appreciate your time. Thanks, Gerri.
Most welcome.
Good to see you. Gerri Willis, Fox Business. We're back in a minute on Newsmaker Saturday. Back on Newsmaker Saturday, a special thank you again to Cochise County Sheriff Mark Dannels. We appreciate his time, and Gerri Willis from Fox Business on what was a turbulent week in the markets, and she spent a little time with us. We appreciate that. A reminder, tomorrow, Mother's Day. Don't forget. And you've got the QR code if you want to see a prior Newsmaker Saturday. We've got a whole catalog of shows. Fox10phoenix.com/newsmaker is the old-fashioned way. Open up your camera app on the phone, get the QR on the screen, and that'll take you right there as well. We appreciate your time as always. It's one of the highlights of the week for me. We'll see you next week on Newsmaker Saturday.